name is Chris West. I am Membership Director for ASID Arizona North Chapter, and I'm simply here to kill time because Gretch is officially going to be giving the presentation, but she does need an introduction, so I figured, why not? So, you don't have to come up here if you don't want. You going to come up here? Gretchen Palmer, ASID President!
Yeah, I probably don't need a microphone either. But we really are excited that everybody's here. This is really kind of a momentous occasion with all of us in one room. It's just wonderful to see everybody. I want to just have Dan Caprario, with the Scottsdale School. Give us just a little bit of a rundown about what the school is about. This is a really fabulous place. It is. So, yeah.
A microphone either. So first off, I'd like to welcome ASID and every other acronym that existed. So I'm not even going to try to. Really, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. I know you guys are all local, and there's so many new faces to the school that haven't been here before. And if you don't know about us, it's an inspirational place to come to work. I'm so thankful that I get to walk around these hallways, meet some of the most amazing artists from all around the country and world. We have a wonderful staff here. All, but very productive, and as you guys walk through the hallways after this, feel free to ask them questions, learn a little bit more about the school. Also, while you're walking around, just so you know, all the art that you see throughout these hallways is all in work. It's part of our second big fundraiser of the year called the Best and Bright, and that consists of anybody who's taken a class here in the past 3 years has the opportunity to enter into a juried show. And through that, we come 150 pieces that you'll see around the school. It is all for sale. And really, it is a huge fundraiser. We're a 501c3. We love help. We never turn it away. And we hope you guys come back as either students or as art enthusiasts in general. We also have a huge Youth Academy program coming up this summer, so hopefully some of you guys out there, kids. There's plenty of literature throughout the school for you to pick up, take home with you, and share with your friends. Our website's wonderful, Facebook, a place to find out about us. And just a little bit about the school you're in. I know you're interior designers, construction, so you are actually currently occupying the second ever elementary school for Scottsdale, Arizona. When the Little Red School became overpopulated, they built this, originally Scottsdale Grammar School, 1928. And actually, as you walk through the hallways, a cool little piece. The hallway right out here used to be an open archway patio, so wildlife come through. And when the terracotta floor tiles were put together, actually coyotes and roadrunners and javelina that once existed in these parts used to make their way through the school. So as you walk through the school, you'll see actual coyote prints, not faux, not just looking to impress. You'll even see some toenails in some of them. But anyway, I do encourage you guys to come back again, talk to our staff this evening, learn more about us, and you know, it sounds like a big night for you guys too, so I hope you all enjoy, and thanks again for coming.
ASID. Everybody just kind of stand up. Your ASID member, you got a lot of joy. All right. Yay. And how about IFDA? Do we have any members from AIA? How about ARA? Members of ARA? No, I'm not. IDCA. You have members of IJ. Yay! IIDA. Oh. And ARI? NARI? NEWH. Is there anything you're not in?
I am the king of pollination.
Now, NKBA. Did I miss anyone? Is there any other groups that are represented? NAHB. Oh, NAHB. All right. And did I say how excited we are to have you all here? We really, really are.
Do you have a microphone?
Yes. Does it work? Lapel. Does it work? I don't know how to do this. I'm going to yell. Okay. With our... Oh, that better? I'll say. Okay. Now I'll start. Yeah, this is a school after all, isn't it? We're just going to have a couple people come up about a couple programs that we've got going, and then we're going to find out from the rest of you if there are any events that you would like us to know about. Trade shows. Cindy, are you around? Cindy Wooten.
Do I have to come? I can just yell.
Take the mic.
Hi, I am going to be very brief. The Elements Trade Show is March 20th. It is full. The exhibitors have sold out, so it's very successful already. And so now you all need, the trade show is free. It's at the Scottsdale Center for the Performing Arts. We do want you to register so we know who's coming and we can plan for it. There is also a luncheon, which is going to be fun and interactive. And really important is this national speaker that's being brought in. Dave's an author, and I've read his book. It's fabulous. And he speaks about the power of understanding people and how to sell them to aren't your style and how to identify their style. And he's very funny too, so he'll hold your attention. Thank you. Bye.
We need a dunce cap or something up there. And Jeanette Knudsen, are you close? Okay, our design for hire.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending. I just wanted to remind our ASID members that Design for Hire opens up tomorrow, March 1st, and runs April 30th. We are looking for designers to sign up. You may go ahead and do that online, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call Kathy. Raise your hand, Kathy. Okay. All right.
It is.
Design for Hire is a program that we offer to the public. It is a fundraiser, one of the fundraisers for the year. The money goes towards students and education. And what we do is designers volunteer their time, an hour to 2 hours max, and we go out and public hires us. The money that they pay goes towards our fundraiser. So did I explain that clearly? Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And welcome, everyone. This is the second year that we have been partners with the Stardust Foundation for Design for Hope. And this is something that everyone in the room can participate in. They recycle, redesign, reuse, and redo. Hi. Jewel Blair. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the Stardust Foundation for their upcoming event called Design for Hope. We are trying to get as many designers, contractors, members, crafty people, anybody that would like to projects that you have done using recycled or materials for our Design for Hope. That's taking place April 24th, this is Thursday, at the Stardust location at 39th and the Bird. From 5:30 to 8:30. If you missed it last year, this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us to give to that foundation. We've been working with them for a year, and we're really excited about working for another year. But it would be so great if you want to make something out of a recycled product, and we're going to have it auctioned off, and that's how we're going to raise funds. So these flyers are on the table when you go out. Everyone in the room may participate in this activity. We are partnering with NARI as sponsors of the event, but I want to invite everyone to participate.
I'm looking all over for you.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Hornsey, KD with the NKBA. Our next event is going to be March 8th. We're going to have a St. Patrick's Day celebration at Kitchen Southwest. We're going to be doing a recap of the recent kitchen and bath industry show. So we'd love to have you all join us. Thank you.
Can I invite anybody else? Come on, please, just tell us what's going on. Sorry. That's what happens when you're in the back.
My name is Kristen Wolf, and I'm with WH Arizona chapter, and we are implementing our first golf tournament this year. So anyone that has experience with that, we'd love to hear it, but I'll let you know that. So it's our first annual scholarship golf tournament, April 20th. Registration at 7 a.m. and the first tee-off shotgun start at 7:30. We'll be at McCormick Ranch Golf Club. Expect a tremendous turnout. So it's a beautiful, beautiful course. Don't go, I mean, you can at least go there for the lunch and have a nice time. But everybody's going to enjoy it. A very good time. So if you have any questions, let me know, and keep in mind NEWH Arizona. Thank you.
I'm Gina Mathis with IFDA, and we're going to be an event in October, but I want to get it on your radar because it is for all designers as well, and it's called Take a Seat. And we're going to be raising funds for a local charity. We're leaning towards something for homeless people or something for veterans coming back. A home. Everybody deserves a home. So that's our focus, and we'll be getting more and more information out, but I just wanted you to get that on your radar. October 9th through the 17th this year. We'll let you know.
I forgot. We're having a sample sale May 3rd at the Scottsdale Design Center. We are looking for items to sell. You got lots, we'll take them. I have my tonight if you have something with you. Try to be prepared at all times. But if you have something that you would like to donate, you go on our website, you can get the contact information. So flyers at the front desk. When you go out, you can pick up that information. And LaRonda Golden is our chair, along with Beth Donlin. And we have a full committee, so please come out and support Smile Train and membership scholarships. Thank you.
Nice to see us all sharing events and just welcome everybody again, but it is my pleasure at this point to introduce Jim Rounds. For those who don't know him, he is a senior vice president economist with Elliott D. Pollock and Company. And when anybody wants any information in the state of Arizona regarding economics, this is who they go to. So without further ado, Rounds.
Okay, I heard this is a very dangerous podium up here. If I fall down, there's two things that you need to remember. One is that the long-term outlook is still very positive. The second is that, yes, it's true, economists make what we say. And I'm not going to bore you. The group is going to send out the PowerPoint so you can look at some of the data, but I wouldn't even subject myself to an economic brief. I don't go to my colleagues' presentations either. So I'll try to make this short and sweet and cover the basics. But I do love evening presentations because everybody has a little bit of liquor in them and they think that I'm a little bit smarter than I really am. So. And I've been on vacation for the last week, and so I'm assuming that everything that happened before this last week, the same smooth stuff continued, and we had no controversy. My forecast is based on a very smooth transition into the fall. Let's talk about national first. Arizona is going to go the same direction as the national. I think I could have done this before too. My wife often criticizes me for doing stupid. This is probably something I've done in the past. Something to keep in mind. This is actually a slide I could have done for Arizona as well, especially with this last week. Attention to the last week. It was a very painful last week. I had to do some interviews, and it was just interesting. But when you hear the economic crises that at the national level, think about, you have to differentiate between what's new and what's part of the base. And so part of the economic base, forecast base, we were talking about European debt crisis, the debt ceiling, problems with Obamacare, a fiscal cliff, government down debt ceiling again. This is part of how Washington operates. Now, the only way that I would actually change my forecast is if very intelligent were done for about half of the year. And since that's probably not, the forecast that we have is probably pretty solid for now. And so my main point is, you're going to hear about these things, but we've been there before. And this isn't our first rodeo, and the same statement applies to Arizona as well. We went through this last week, and it's in our first rodeo, even though there are some economic consequences, and I can give you some numbers on that people haven't talked about. Very basic economic indicators. People overanalyze the employment numbers. You can get down to rules in almost all of these things. When you hear about the U.S. economy creating 200,000 jobs on a month-over-month basis, you know that the recovery has taken a stronger foothold. In this case, we're still a little bit below that. A lot of that's attributed to the weather, but providing numbers all over the place. They're saying that maybe that impacted the numbers by about 50,000, but we were trending around 200,000. I think this is going to take off this summer, not dramatically, but I think that it's going to improve. So rule of thumb, when you start to hear about the employment number around 200,000 a month, feel better, you know what, things are coming together. And another thing, look for a rate when you listen to these economic updates. You're not going to have a situation where, say, Arizona example. Let's say Arizona is growing at 5% in employment and the U.S. unemployment rate, the main point is that it's been going down. Arizona's a little bit different though. What happened is that Arizona was hit so hard during this economic downturn, we had a disproportionate number of people just give up looking for work. If you're not looking for work, you're not in the unemployment. When we were 49 in the country in terms of job growth, and actually said, you guys are doing too well because you're unemployed. Picks that up. If they would have scrolled down about 1.5 inches on their computer screen, they could have looked at the right data. But this is just an example of how sometimes people focus on certain pieces of data that aren't quite as meaningful. So when you hear about changes in the unemployment rate, it doesn't really tell you a whole lot. In fact, I only put the unemployment rate number in there. It doesn't mean anything. Leading indicators sometimes mean something. So this has been improving. And I like this one because it means that I don't have to put 9 other slides. I can just show one. But if you look at the breakdown, the green ones are the ones that are making the leading indicators grow. The black one is the one that's neutral, and the red ones are the ones that are contributing. But what's been happening is that some have a disproportionate impact on the indicators. And so we saw significant increases in the stock market. And you all know the stock market doesn't necessarily follow the economic data anymore. And so you can see a jump in indicators. We might go through a period, because I happen to think that the stock market is overvalued right now because it doesn't match all the other economic data, even though it's been where stock prices could slip just a bit. Leading indicators fall, doesn't mean anything. All it means is that the stock price component has a disproportionate impact, and it caused that to go down a tiny bit. But don't worry too much, because for the most part, you're going to see this improving. And so as we go through this, and just synopsis, I should have done this at the very beginning instead of making a joke about Arizona. Well, no, it deserved to be. This is going to continue to go up, but look for the story. The real story for the U.S. and Arizona is that expect continued improvement at the U.S. level, a little bit better improvement in Arizona, and expect it to accelerate this year. And I think 2015 is that year where the economic data starts to come together and it gets back to more normal conditions. Consumer confidence, there was a big story about how this bit. So that little line right there went down by that little tiny amount. Doesn't mean shit. I don't know if that's the wine. But look for trends. When you hear about how leading indicators drop down just a little bit, 8 point whatever, even economists don't care about that. 100 is normal. If it's hovering around 80, that seems about right for how we're growing. It'll get back to 100 probably middle of next year. But look for the trends. Monthly data is irrelevant, so don't get too excited about data if you're doing any business planning, even with the Arizona data. Wealth effect. You can't see this, but it says not homeless, I have a job, saying hello. When things really tank across the U.S. and in Arizona, and economics, and I hate to admit this because actually you only have to look at a few indicators to really understand what's happening. Economists try to mask that and make it sound more complicated than it is. We talk about economic modeling and stuff. There's really no such thing as a model. We just put numbers in. But what happened to household wealth? What happened to college? Housing prices fall dramatically, and so people were upside down in their homes. That was a temporary condition for most, but people are upside down in their homes. They bought a $300,000 house that should have been $200,000, and they're significantly upside down. Housing prices are up. They lost their retirement portfolios. What has been the growth in the economy? It's been the stock market. So these two areas are the ones that most dramatically impacted how consumers behave. These are the two areas that improved the most, and that's why you're seeing government revenues improve, and they're more optimistic about the programs that they can fund, and that's why you're seeing some businesses that are related to consumer spending starting to improve some. Now, related to what consumers are spending their money on and also going into debt, the one is that consumers got their households in order really starting about last year. Now, there's a measure that we have, and it measures how much of current income people are using to pay for past purchases. Somebody is earning money now, but they're paying off debt that they incurred during a downturn. They're not really spending money on the new goodies in their homes. But now a bigger percentage are spending money, their current income, on current purchases. The ones that are going into debt are buying vehicles. They're not going into debt to buy, it's not going into credit card debt as much. One of the reasons has to do with the fact that people hung on to their cars much longer. So some people have been asking, does this mean that we have maybe another bubble brewing? We used to have a vehicle fleet that was maybe 7 to 8 years old. Now it's about 11 years old. So this is something that people are going to be purchasing new cars 2 to 3 years. It's going to be like that fiscal cliff really wasn't a cliff. It's going to be like that for the new car data. So consumers are going to continue to purchase new cars. They're not going to go into excessive debt. And I think we'll be okay. I don't think there's any kind of a bubble brewing. In fact, at this stage in the recovery, and we have to differentiate between timing of the recovery, and this is what most focusing on. They're saying at this point in the recovery in terms of the date, we're not doing as well as we should be. We're 4.5 years into the story. Did you know that the average expansion is 5 years? That doesn't mean that we're going to go into a recession. We probably have a good 3 to 4 years to go before we might go into another bubble situation. We have a downturn. But we're almost 5 years into this recovery. But it doesn't matter if we're 5 years into the recovery. It's the year, so to speak, since we just talked about cars. So in this particular situation, the economic data really is resembling this quality of the recovery. If you look at the history of economic recoveries, if you look at the dates, we're way, way behind how we've recovered in the past. But in terms of the quality, the economic stuff is actually making sense. And this is one reason that I'm more confident about our access than I have in the last 5 years. Because last year at this time, a third of the economic data kind of wasn't making sense. About 2/3 was. But a third of the economic data, we were trying to figure out what's going on. Almost everything, same story. So you know that some of these things that are positive are really happening, where before we were still doing some guesswork. Consumers. If there's anybody from PETA or anybody else, I apologize. I don't know how this got in there. If we're looking at businesses, a few data points that we'd like to look at. Business spending on equipment is between 0. Normally we'd like to see 2 to 4%. So even this is consistent with the story. Slow, steady recovery. We're going to see improvement this year, but we're probably going to be in the range next year. Now, business spending on plant. So we saw a big dip right here, but we're still growing at 2 to 4%. So this is actually good. Now, whenever I have data points like this, for the most part, people aren't paying attention to me by now in the presentation, so I don't have data points. But just in case, I called the BEA, and that is a painful process. I earned my money that week just with that hour-long phone call. And it took me a while, and the top-level people didn't know what they were talking about, economic modeling and all sorts of error factors, whether or not it was the standard deviation was realistic. I got to this guy that said, and this is all quote, there's some weird shit happening with utilities. When I heard that, I knew That was the right answer. So this is an anomaly. That was the most honest answer I've ever gotten from a government person. And he didn't ask for his name, which is probably why he gave me an honest answer. So if you ignore that, businesses are improving. Here's one area we're worried about a little bit. If this line is below that one, it means that we're adding jobs, but there's still a lot of part-time jobs. Is that a problem? Well, you have to think about it in two ways. Is that a problem? Yes. But is it a problem and is it unexpected this stage in the recovery? Actually, it's not. Think of past recoveries where the improvement was over a shorter period. This would have been much steeper and it would have gotten back to normal. So this is following the same pattern. This isn't even unexpected. So when you hear stories about how we're creating a lot of part-time jobs and the economy is completely different before, not really. We went through a very different recession and therefore we have a very recovery. Now, if this still looked like that, maybe in another 3 years, we have a major problem. But let's address that in 3 years. Top sources of new jobs across the US. I want to bring this up now more for I want to make in just a few minutes. Administration services, not really services, retail trade. So we're not talking about the high value added industries. But again, for us, this was completely expected. In another couple of years, you're going to see the higher value added industries adding those high wage jobs. Well, a company like a Walmart can cut employment pretty easily. They can cut, they can add, they can move pretty quickly. A company, when they've invested 10 years of education and a lot of money in these employees, they're not just suddenly going to cut those employees and send hacking. So they tend to lag a little bit. Now, when you get into recovery, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to see those that are more flexible in terms of their hiring, like retail and the lower value added industries, add the employees back quickly, the ones where they don't need as much training. And then after the recovery takes hold, you see the higher value added employees coming. Stories about where we stand in terms of the national economy and even in Arizona, where we're still adding a lot of retail employees, we're still adding these. They are always the ones that come back first. If you look at every recovery, they are always the ones that come back first. And so again, the timing isn't fantastic, but we went through a very unique economic downturn. Even this was to be expected. Arizona jobs. These are my favorite slides. If I had to pick 5 slides to present, these would be the best ones to show for what happened in Arizona. We were number 2 in terms of job growth in 2006, 49 in 2010. North Dakota added 2 Circle Ks, and so they jumped to number 1. Alaska added a Russian sightseeing tour, so they went up to number 2. But where do we stand now? 2013, we're top 10. You know, maybe a couple more Circle Ks were added. Actually, that has to do with energy. Very base. It doesn't take much to be number 1. The ones that are surprising are massive economic base. When you have an economic base that large, it is really be top 10. But some of that has to do with natural resources as well. But Arizona's top 10 right now. We'll be top 5. I bet $100 on it. Top 5 by next year. I'm not saying that with everybody though, just historically, we've always been 1 or 2. We follow Nevada. We're not going to be following Nevada anymore. We're going to be following probably North Dakota and some of the smaller states that are growing rapidly off of a very small base. Nevada, I had to look at their economic profile recently in a presentation. It has some major economic problems, but I won't get into that. But there are some real economic problems with some of these other states. Nevada, New Mexico, many of recovery is taking hold. You try to break it down by sector, and you see if the sectors are growing. So a couple ago, almost everything was in the red. So we're seeing more and more of this move into the green area, which means we're adding jobs. That's the main point on this. Okay, this is the point I wanted to make. Top sources of new jobs. I'm guessing that a lot of people here have heard how is becoming more dependent on construction and lower value-added industries than it was before the recession. We're adding lower value-added jobs at a disproportionate degree, and there's a lot of business leaders that are actually talking about this. And through some very light intimidation, we've gotten some of them to fall in line and understand math, but not everybody. But top sources of new Arizona jobs: financial activities, higher paying, healthcare. Yeah, there's retail trade, but there's other sectors growing as well. And if you remember the US, administration services, retail trade, which one's doing better? Is Arizona really lagging in terms of the profile of our employment? No. And all you got to do is spend 5 minutes looking at this data, and that's why I was able to use some of those intimidation techniques. Sometimes it's just being in a meeting, and some people are misusing the data, and then you look at the person that's not using the data right, and then the next time they make a presentation, it's saying, you know, Arizona's doing okay. The red line shows the jobs that we lost. So like, for example, construction, we lost half of the covered, or the US lost 29%. So Arizona, this disproportionately impacted Arizona. That's why we nine, even though the federal government said, but you're doing okay. Where are we growing? Financial activities, almost back to 100%. Leisure and hospitality actually went above 100%, and then it dropped back down, but that's within the margin of error of collecting the data. So some sectors we fully heard. Construction, 10.4%. Does this look like a state that is growing disproportionately dependent on construction? No. The best profile, if you're doing a fast of what Arizona is going to look like after we're fully recovered in 2015/2016, depending on the different areas, is what we look like before. It's hard to change your economic base. We have a lot of people and we have a lot of workers here. And you can't just change that overnight. No matter what we do in economic development, if we do really solid economic development over a number of years, you could positively impact it. If you do really dumb legislation over a number of years, you could negatively. But it takes a while for that to happen. And so, but this is okay. We are going to be a growth state going, we are going to be dependent on some of these industries, but that's how it works. If you wanted to just barely impact the economic data, if you wanted to increase, and this is just one little calculation I did, just one of it. If we wanted to just have a 1/10% increase in the median or the average household income in Maricopa County, we'd have to add about 200 to 300,000 jobs making $100,000 a year. So fantastic that we still have these business loads where we're adding 1,000 people or 2,000 people to the roles and they're making high wages. But just basic math, it just takes a while for that to add up. We have to keep doing this for a long time. It's not something you do for a couple of years and you're done. And again, that's basic math, but I'm fully behind my development community trying to do what's best for the state and build the economy. So Greater Phoenix, most of the areas, growth. Manufacturing is different. We're going through a period where there's still some significant adjustment. And manufacturing, I don't evaluate why it's negative. It's the baseline is negative. Can we make that's negative a little less negative? And then can we maybe make it zero and then can we increase it? So you look at the sectors a little bit differently. Employment levels in Greater Phoenix, and I'll just give some very light perspective on Tucson and the rest of the state. If there's a forecast back then, and this is just an example, I think following the trend, this line has not changed since back in 2009. We're looking to get back to the prior peak around 2015, beginning of 2016. And the question that is, but that's an artificially high peak. We've been down so long, that artificially high peak here is also right at the long-term trend. So you can either say this is when we get back to the artificially high peak, or this is when we get back to the long-term trend. But really same thing, because we've been struggling for a number of years. This wasn't just a 3 or 4 month recession and then we recovered within a year. So 2015, getting back to normal. So following the story, what does the other economic data look like? Is it also saying we're getting back to full recovery in 2015, 2016? And the answer is yes, with some of these other slides. Retail sales have been growing. In case any of you track this for your businesses, there was an artificial boost right here. What happened is that the Department of Revenue had to shift some revenues from one category to another. And so, for example, Maricopa County, it made it look like the county grew at about 14 to 15%. If you back out this one-time administration adjustment, it really grew by about 6%, which is pretty close to what we've been trending at. Retail sales are still improving. And this is going to be affecting Maricopa, to a lesser extent Pinal, and then Pima County. Those are the 3 counties that are going to be impacted. So don't get too excited if you saw about how retail sales are going a lot. Some of it had to do with just fixing an error. There were 3 years, and all of that was repaired in one particular month. Worried about because Tucson is at risk of losing a lot of its base sector jobs, the military related jobs. That's where a lot of the cutbacks are going to be occurring at the federal level. But we're losing jobs in more sectors than we're gaining. In fact, our numbers remind me of the presentations for Arizona and Phoenix from about 2 years ago. And so that concerns me a little bit. Remainder state, it's really following the greater Phoenix pattern, but it's a much smaller base. The vast majority of the economic activity in the entire state, about 80% of it is in greater Phoenix, a little bit in Tucson, and then a very small percentage remainder of the state. But Tucson I'm concerned about, and then I'm concerned about how some of the other communities like Sierra Vista and Yuma adapt to this new normal, which is going to be reduced federal government on defense. Can we move into some new industries? And that's some areas where they're trying to work hard at. But unfortunately, like I said before, you have very hard for a number of years before you can really impact the economy. So it may slip a little bit, and then it'll get better. I actually like that song. He left. What could have been more important than an economic update? I don't understand that. We've heard that it's been pretty stagnant. Again, because we had a new Circle K, 3 more people showed up. But we were number 7 in 2012. That's not too bad. Historically, number 2 behind Nevada. That's no longer going to be the case because of some of the economic problems. But even during prior downturns, so 2001 we had a recession, we went from 2 to 3. This is the recession. So everybody's saying that Arizona tends to be impacted more by recession. This is the only recession that we've ever had where we've been more impacted than the rest of the country. And this was a very unique recession that a lot of it had to do with mortgage issues and housing and all sorts of stuff. And so normal recession isn't what we just went through. The normal recession is that we tend to weather the storm a bit better. And that's, again, why we're a little bit more optimistic. You go back to when you look at how, if you want to analyze how a state might move forward. Number 3 in terms of domestic migrants, but we were number 18 in terms of international migration. This is a number where we looked into, and it's not all that dependable, but it's the official number that's out there. So it looks like we're doing well attracting people from within the country, not as well attracting people from outside the country. But this number, I don't have a lot of faith in, but it is worth putting up there and thinking that it's no good. So maybe actually I should take it out. Housing. Great. I know you're very interested in this. A lot of the people renting are now wanting to buy, and there's been a number of studies that have been conducted over the last several years, and a very high percentage of renters actually would like to buy the home that they're renting, but they would like to buy another. Those people that have doubled up because of the downturn are now, we're getting some population growth back. We've had about 1%. My rule of thumb, if I was just providing some general advice, 0.5% to the numbers that you just saw this past year. So if we have 1% population growth, expect about 1.5 this next year. Statewide, we had about 2% employment growth. It'll be about 2.5. Greater Phoenix, we had about 2.5 employment growth. It'll probably be closer to 3. So about 0.5% better in categories. And the retirees are less tied to their current homes. What I was saying before, people are better off in terms of their home values and their retirement portfolio. There's actually pent-up demand for retirement. We've done the best job, though, promoting retirees coming to Arizona, and I think we're not going to full advantage of that. And I've said this a number of times. We don't have an office of retirement and second home purchases. We have an office of tourism, and when compared to a lot of our competitors. And so I'm hoping that maybe we make some improvements there. But I won't go on a rant on that because I know that it's that would be boring. Single family permits for Greater Phoenix, we had that 71% increase. But this is where percentages go. This is the type of recovery where I don't rely on the percentages. You have to look at the base. So you fall by 50%, you got to grow by 100 to get back to where you were. So that's like 3rd or 4th grade math. A lot of people still don't understand that. When I go down to state capitol, I think I have to explain that more than most places. But now we only had 10% growth in 2013. But in terms of cast, we're expecting by about 2015, 2016 to get about 25,000 single family permits. Normal would be 30 and 40. but we're getting back to more normal conditions. One of the issues that nobody has their minds around has to do with the number of vacant homes. If you do the simple analysis possible, you look at what was built and the people that moved here, we still have vacant homes on the market. Now, there are some people that say, well, the prices went up. So you look at basic supply and demand, we must have worked through the excess. Now, the only thing that shows me is that those people at least made it through 5th or 6th grade and graduated with honors, and that's about it. Because there's a lot more to it. So some analysts are saying we worked through all the excess. Some are saying that we still have 70,000 to 80,000 units. Our best guess is that there might be maybe 40,000 vacant units. We're going to have to work through some of the excess. So as come in, you're not going to see new construction at the same rate as the population numbers, but it doesn't take a lot based on our larger base to work through that. It's going to be okay when 2015, 2016-ish. Again, everything's come together around that time, and we're finally getting close to, and we were saying that back in 2010. People are thinking, I don't want to hear it, this sucks. But right now, at least we're getting closer, so we can be a little bit more optimistic. Home prices, we increased home prices by about 23% in 2012. And so if we continued at that short period, it was about a 30% increase year over year. We're developing to develop a bubble. The last thing we need right now is a bubble. And so you knew that the rate was going to go down. You can't keep having those high rates of growth. Initially you have those high rates of growth, but eventually it has to come back down to normal levels. So last year we just finished 2013 at about 15%. If we go down to maybe 10% growth, people forget historically that's still pretty. If we slow down to 10% growth the next year and then maybe 8 the next, back to normal conditions around. Again, all this stuff is tied together. Let's talk about some of the The sad thing is that whenever I have to travel and I have to drive by car for a presentation, I buy for a couple of hamburgers to eat along the way, but I always get heartburn, so screw McDonald's. Retail space vacancy rates, it's been going down. But this varies so much region by region. You look at Buckeye, it's completely different than maybe a higher income area in Phoenix. It jumps around a lot. But you're seeing improved vacancy rates. You look at office, we're seeing some improvement, but still, even the projection is still well above the long-term average, which is closer to around 10 to 15. So we still have a ways to go. Office was the most overbuilt of the commercial category. Around 7 to 8%, maybe 9. Industrial is probably going to be, and that might be a little bit too pessimistic because I think that we're adding a lot of jobs that require industrial space a little bit more than they were anticipating, even though my favorite forecast is still with the blue chip and then the analysis RE. I have a buddy that I get happy hour with, and he pays for the happy hour on occasion, so as long as I mention CBRE on occasion, I agree with you. Multifamily. This issue of the single-family market competing with multifamily. Fairness, multifamily didn't overbuild by as much. And while a lot of people are renting single-family homes, a lot of people that left single-family homes because of foreclosure or whatever also moved to multifamily. Multifamily is already back at the long-term average, and you're going to see additional construction in this area. In fact, it's already happening. What else can and will happen? This is basically a chart that tries to diagram that issue of things coming to Arizona. Arizona, the darker they're at higher risk of being impacted by federal government spending cuts. We're at disproportionate risk because of our high dependence on military spending. And everybody already knows this, but it's not the same for every community. And again, I'm more worried about the southern Arizona communities than I am greater Phoenix. That's a little bit more diversified. Sunbelt. And this is the best year to promote Arizona. Think about how this is coming together. You always like things to kind of come for where it was, but there's that, I love it when a plan comes together statement. Oh, 18. All of these people that have been postponing retirement that live in these cold weather states are now able to retire, like I showed you with some of those income statistics. We're naturally gonna get growth in these areas. It's gonna occupy some of those remaining vacant housing units. We're gonna be in better shape. They're gonna be spending. Retiree may not be earning income, but they're bringing wealth. And so that's income data. It's still good for the economy. It's a base industry. They're bringing wealth to the area. A base industry is any industry that brings to an area, bounces around until it leaves. And so Richmond is one of those areas. Great opportunity to promote that. In terms of economic development, this is where I'm torn. We were leading the charge about 4 years ago in trying to make the state. We did a report for the people at the Capitol that said Arizona made 50th in the country in terms of its ability to compete for new business locations, because we were way behind. Why? Because the growth was allowing us to ignore some of those deficiencies in how we were promoting the states. Most states, we probably improved more than most states. It doesn't mean that we're more competitive than all the states, but we've made the greatest strides in trying to improve ourselves. So 2011 and 2012, and this is the only that I know of, and this has nothing to do with the person paying for happy hour. The analysis, this is the only analysis that I've seen that tries to rank the states that actually has spreadsheets behind it, to actually look at economic data. All the other ones are just guesswork. You make it look like they're looking at math, and they're really not. There's this one from Kaufman, and it ranked Arizona as #1 a couple of years ago. All of a sudden we fell to 21. And I thought, well, that makes no sense. We've been actually doing better. And so it took us 10, 15 minutes, and we saw the potential in the analysis. And so if you factor that in, what they were saying, it could be 1 or it could be 50. So, for instance, the rankings don't mean anything. And those areas where we can actually be effective at promoting Arizona, that doesn't cost it. It just requires us to promote the best of what the state can do. Now, sometimes we promote the worst of the state, sometimes we promote the best. But in these cases, this is very cheap to promote some of that information where we really stand. And I looked at, I think, about 10 of these, and there wasn't one that was accurate. In every case, we were better in terms of the ranking than what the number was showing. And so that's one of the things that some of the economic developers are looking at. What is our real ranking and how can we promote it? Because again, that costs nothing. You try to lure a company in like Texas, give them $30 million, you pay a consultant, hopefully they'll pay it, do it internally, and it costs 3 or 4 hours worth of time to figure out where we're going, and then you put that on the website. And so that's the kind of stuff that we need. But I asked, we had all the tools, and we changed our tax policy. We did a lot in 2011, 2012. Why are you ranking us as non-competitive? And the answer was, there's no coordination. I go to Missouri, this is a site selector talking, I go to Missouri, and I say, I'm looking to locate a manufacturing plant. Within, they would have the governor, the mayors of the different cities in the region that they're looking at, everybody all ready to meet with them. We weren't doing that back then. We're actually doing that now. So, all of a sudden we're in this area, which means we're kind of in the middle. This is where we should. If we turn into one of these dark green states, that means that you're giving away more incentives than you're getting in return. We don't want a dark green state, even though that from a site selector's perspective, that's fantastic because they're getting the most money for their client. We're in that sweet spot right now. If we turn into the dark green state, that's when you start to say, all right, shut it all down poorly. But right now we're getting to that point where we actually have pretty good set of tools. We don't necessarily have to be cutting taxes left and right. Some of these businesses, believe it or not, actually demand roads and schools and things like that. So, I mean, I know, shocking. So right now,